Yo people, welcome back to another review. This time it's Andor Season 2. Now with Season 1 we heard how the views were some of the lowest that Star Wars projects have ever received, and I don't know if it's the same for this project, if it's going to happen, if it's happening. I haven't checked the news, but Season 2, even if it does happen, it doesn't deserve it. Andor is actually a well-made show, but the only problem is the acquired taste of having a slow show, which even for me, the show dragged a lot in Season 1, but Season 2 is different. Season 2 made the pain of watching Season 1 at times feel worth it. The show had a really good ending. I think the first 3 episodes for me, they were kind of a struggle to get through, only because I didn't expect the slow tempo that we saw in Season 1 in Season 2, but it had to connect a lot of Season 1, so I understand why maybe the tempo was set like that. Some of my least favourite parts in this whole season were actually in episodes 1 to 3, and a lot of it was to do with the Mon Mothma wedding stuff, and I get it showed us how she made sacrifices to kickstart the rebellion financially and giving up her daughter essentially and all of that, but I don't know, it just felt like her part and this whole wedding thing would slow down the other stories that were taken on at the same time. I think the pacing could have improved a lot for the wedding scenes. However, I liked that every 3 episodes was basically a 1-year time jump, and this actually made the show feel better because there would be a quicker pace every 3 episodes and the stakes, the tension would elevate even further. I'm pretty sure we lost at least 1 rebel member from Season 1 every 3 episodes, so that was pretty interesting to see. We could also see every 3 episodes how the rebellion got more and more established and it kept expanding, eventually ended up in Yavin, which was pretty cool to see. And I actually think this was a good move instead of making episodes where we see them do all these side missions like in Rebels. I think actually that this type of show complements Rebels nicely. Shout out if you've watched Rebels, the animated series. But the reason I say these 2 shows complement each other is because Andor Season 2 and Andor in general added so much context as to how the rebellion was built, how the Empire kept gaslighting everyone, how they kept getting away with murder literally, and all the bad things that they would do across the galaxy. In a way, Andor in itself not only adds context to Star Wars, but to the Rebels show in particular, because some of it does overlap and take place at similar times. So if you want more informed versions of events that explains a lot more of the key information and details, then you watch Andor. If you just want missions and a quicker paced overview, then you watch Rebels. And having watched both, I think they both suit each other. We even have characters like Saw Gerrera and Mon Mothma appear in the Rebels animated series and obviously in Andor. I think seeing how the Empire would gaslight the media and the people was some of my favourite stuff to see, because it was crazy to see just how they always had planned excuses and other excuses as preventions, and they had everything so calculated ahead of time. Another good thing that I liked is that characters I didn't care for or I thought were annoying in Season 1 were actually better in Season 2. For example, I hated Cyril. There was nothing bad that he really did, but he was just boring and I didn't care for him. But in Season 2, he was a lot better alongside Dedra as well. I think humanizing both of these characters was a good move, and we even saw Saw Gerrera have a good performance. And for me personally, I don't like that guy because of what he did in the Bad Batch Season 2, but he had some great scenes in this show as well. Especially, I want to say it was, I think, the end of episode 5 where he gave that monologue with Wilman, which I thought was very impactful, and the show does a really good job of these speeches, the monologues, tying in the music, creating tense moments between all these characters when they have these dialogue scenes, and you can tell that every detail is well thought of. As much as people, you may not like the show or you may not have the attention span for the show, you can't complain that Tony Gilroy and everyone involved in this project didn't try their best. Then we have characters, for me, that just made this show even better and carried it. Characters like Andor, Bix, Luthen, who kept things lively even if it was like a 5-minute dialogue scene. They were always doing something interesting or pushing the plot. And another character that stood out for me in this season in particular, and he can be added to this list, is Wilman. I think he really impressed me this season. Even K2SO, he only really showed up towards the end of this show, but I think he added a nice comedic touch to the show. He livened things up, which was a nice thing to see, and really brought more energy to the show. Now, personally, before this show even came out, before Season 2 came out, I thought we would see maybe an Ahsoka cameo at the end. Like, she's on Yavin for 2 seconds, they show her, and that's it. I actually think this show did well without any of those cameos from any Jedi or Darth Vader or Palpatine. Like, yeah, it would have been cool to see, but I think it was nice to not see them, especially because Rogue One was really about the people that didn't have the Force, and it was was good to see Andor continue that and not really put its attention on more established or nostalgia based names. Also, we saw that Palpatine, for example, got a bunch of name drops throughout the show, so that still kept things interesting and it felt like it connected to the bigger picture of Star Wars. I think Krennic was a good villain, and we see he didn't have maybe as many scenes as we would have liked, but he definitely makes the most out of his appearances. I think towards the back end when we started seeing Mon Mothma, Bail Organa and all the politicians around, I think it really started to up the stakes and it really would make you feel like, yeah, we're heading into Rogue One territory. I think from episode 8 to episode 12 of Andor season 2, this was some of the best we've seen of this show and some of the best Disney Plus content we've got in general. The ending of the show, I think it was very impactful because it wasn't like a big war or a big shock or some cameo fest or death fest where everyone dies or anything like that. It actually stuck the landing perfectly, which was to connect onto Rogue One. And that's where the big war happens and the culmination of these 2 seasons takes place. It even showed us cool little details at the end with things like Saw Gerrera getting ready to execute his plan that we actually see him do in Rogue One. I do kind of wish that season 1 had this kind of tempo that we saw towards the back end of season 2 where there was a build up at least of something, but I don't know. I think season 1 just felt like it dragged at times, but I appreciate that it built the foundations which allowed season 2 to flourish and be better. That big reveal at the end that Bix had a kid with Andor and she was just living that farm life and raising the kid, I think it was interesting because it shows once again the overall message of sacrifice in this show and across the rebellion. We saw characters like Saw Gerrera and Luthen and a lot of the other characters along the way from even season 1. They knew they probably weren't going to be alive for the day the victory of the rebellion happened, but they still did it. They still gave their lives up so that the future generations and the current people living right now could have a better future and essentially help everyone else. So that big scene, I think it was pretty cool. It kind of reminded me of Luke when he's also technically on his farm staring into the sun. So I think it was a cool way to kind of give Bix that kind of Luke Skywalker moment, but in a different perspective where she knows Andor is doing good, the sacrifice was worth it, and she and her kid can now live a better future because of it. There was some negatives, and a lot of it was the Mon Mothma wedding parts that I've already covered. I think Val was a character that I never really cared for, unfortunately. Even when her girlfriend died, I didn't really care. There was also small nitpicks like how did Cyril outmuscle Andor and kind of have him beaten in a fight. That's some of the kind of unfortunate things about these time jumps. We don't really get that full context, especially for a show that is really diving into how all these things happen. But we just have to assume that he learned how to fight throughout those time jumps, he got taught or something happened there. But overall, there's not really a lot that you can pick out and say it was outright bad in terms of the structure, in terms of inconsistent storytelling. I do have another point, but this is just, again, small part and it was just a personal thing. I don't know if anyone else really cares about it, but it did feel like some moments did have this Kathleen type of energy where, for example, Val was shouting at the guy who was crying. I think that was a bit weird. Like, she was fully like shouting, "Oh, you useless guy, blah, blah, blah." Like, I think that was a bit unnecessary. But yeah, overall, this was good content all round. I'm glad we got this show despite, like I've mentioned, the slow parts in season 1. And most importantly, this show was made because it adds context to Star Wars, to the Empire, to the Rebellion, and just seeing more blanks being filled in compared to a show like Book of Boba Fett that just felt forced, or Obi-Wan which was poorly done and ended up relying on nostalgia. So this should always be the focus of making a Star Wars show. Fill out the blanks, fill in the information, and then everything will just flow better and naturally because there's an actual purpose. The purpose isn't, oh, nostalgia, we need Ewan back, we need Hayden back. No, it should be the way they've done this show. But yeah, as always, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Where does Andor rank for you in terms of Star Wars content? Where does the character rank for you? What did you make of season 2? And any other thoughts that you may have in particular. I'd appreciate if you could leave a like on the video as well and sub to the channel. That would massively be appreciated. Thank you for your time.